Well, welcome back to Stars and Hedgerows. I'm Sue Brain and I'm with my lovely colleague Sue Judge, who's a holistic practitioner and nutritionist. Now, today, well, it's Samhain, isn't it? And this is the time of the year when the veil thins between the seen world and the unseen world. And traditionally, this was a time where people respected and revered their ancestors and they paid homage to them. And obviously, the famous Day of the Dead in Mexico is a perfect example of this, of people going to their ancestors' graves and having great big family parties on them. They do the same in Italy, where they bring the bones of their ancestors out, and they have a picnic and a party, as only Italians can do. Well, we don't really do that over here. We're much more trying to suppress that, we'll put it that way, because the Christian church didn't really approve of this whole concept of the worshipping of the ancestors. So they named the 1st of November All Saints' Day. So they turned it into a Christian festival. But actually, this Samhain goes back hundreds, thousands of years. And Sue, do you want to talk about the great bonfires or bone festivals that happened?
Yeah, so this is the last of the 4 fire festivals, and it's often spoken of as in regard to harvest as the blood harvest. So this is probably the time when the animals would have been culled, and then to help them last through the winter. So it was referred to as a blood harvest. And I was quite interested to notice that it actually wasn't referred to as bonfire, but bones fire. So after this, the bones were burnt. The carcasses of the animals were burnt. So from a harvest point of view, you've got the meat, but you've also got the last few berries, things like sloes and nuts, if you can be quick enough to get them before the squirrels.
They're buggers, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a real time I remember my mum at this time of year bottling things. And I think you're going to talk about that, aren't you?
Yeah. So we have different ways of preserving our food. So often we've got things like salting, pickling, so that's in a vinegar, drying, curing, so smoking. So we have these different ways of preserving food to help us to last over the winter. One of the things that I'm going to talk to you today about is sauerkraut. So in Eastern Europe, there's more of a tradition of sauerkraut, but certainly we would have had fermented foods, beer, cider, it's all fermented. But this is a great way of using some of the vegetables. So predominantly sauerkraut's made with cabbage, so the hard cabbage that you'd make coleslaw out, not Savoy cabbage. And you'd have a minimum of at least half of your ingredients would be cabbage, and then you can add other things like carrots or beetroots or turnip, other of those hard root vegetables in as well. And it would be, again, something to see you through the winter. And I don't think they realized then, but from a nutritional point of view, how good it is for your gut. And your gut is then obviously that's impacting your immune system and also your mental health. So they knew a thing or two.
They did. And my mum always used to bottle fruit and sauerkraut. Well, we didn't call it sauerkraut. Over at this time of year, I remember bottles and bottles of it. But of course, because of the supermarkets and food being so readily available, we've lost the skill of doing that. So it's lovely to be able to talk about it and encourage people to start thinking about bottling and pickling again. Because
Yeah.
I think we're going to have to relearn these very ancient techniques of how to feed ourselves over the winters, particularly with the economic climate as it is.
Absolutely.
Yes,
so one of the things that probably a lot of people will have heard of is making sloe gin. So you've got the sloe berries here, and we have had some frosts, so they're a little bit more tender now. If we haven't had frost, you can put them in your freezer before you use them. And most people prick them, and you fill a bottle half full with berries, and then top the rest up with gin, and said to leave it as long as you can to
and I'm just going to add a little bit to that. I always put almonds in mine. It just gives it a beautiful nutty flavour.
That sounds good. And then wait as long as you can. I think from a nutritional point of view, yes, you might have some vitamin C and you might get some antioxidants, but it's just a lovely sort of warming kind of drink to have a little shot of as the weather gets colder.
Especially on Christmas morning, it's a lovely thing to do. It's really traditional, isn't it? Now, you've brought along some pretty lovely gifts from the hedgerows.
I have.
So what have you bought?
So the first thing I bought is something that some years ago I noticed in a neighbour's hedge, and it's called spindle. And I just fell in love with these beautiful pink kind of flowers. They're not the flower, but they kind of look like a flower. And then in the middle, they have these bright orange berries.
Isn't it?
Just extraordinary. So I thought it was a shrub, but actually it's called the spindleberry, and it was planted in hedgerows. It's incredibly poisonous, all of it. So look, but don't eat.
Yeah.
Definitely not. But I just thought it was beautiful. And the name spindle comes from, they used to make spindles for wool, weaving wool.
And pegs and bobbins and knitting needles. Also, so it was used to weave, to sort of weave things together. I think that's why it's very affiliated to the Druid orders, isn't it?
Yeah.
Magic of the Druid.
And there is something that says that it's connected to change, transformation, and power.
Yes, an inspiration. I also read about the fact it's called, and there's another word for it, which I think is absolutely delightful. And I think this is associated with the fact it's used for pegs and bobbins and stuff like that. It's prickwood.
Yeah.
And the other I read also that it's amazing plant. It's used to make gunpowder charcoal. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
So many properties.
And charcoal for artists as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So that I thought was amazing. And look in the hedgerows, because you'll see the difference between the pink and the red of the rose hips. It stands out quite a lot.
Yeah, and they're tiny. They're like little sparkles of light, of colour at this time of year when everything is beginning to really sink in, isn't it? I just think it's the most wonderful gift. And actually, Sue, it was you that brought to my attention, so I'm going to thank you for that. And now everywhere I go, the other thing about spindle, if you see spindle in a hedge, it's said to mark the fact it's an ancient woodland. So that's an interesting thing I found out about spindle as well. So let's celebrate spindle at this time of year and bring it into your house to find inspiration. But as Sue said, do not eat.
So we've got the berries that most people will be associate with the hedgerows at the moment. We've got the hawthorn still and the rose hips. So both of those you can make a syrup out of. The hawthorn are very high in pectin, so it will set, but you want to remove the flesh. You just want the liquid. You want to remove the flesh.
And there's plenty of books, there's plenty of books and information on the net to discover how to make it well. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, as a child, we would have seen is conkers, so horse chestnuts. So these are beautiful. We used to play with them. Obviously, kids don't do things like that now. There is a tale that says that if you put these in the corner of the room, it keeps the spiders out.
Doesn't work. I used to live on a narrow boat, and at this time of year, fill the boat with it.
Yeah, shame.
It's a lovely tale, isn't it? But
yeah. And from a medicinal point of view, horse chestnut is really great for the venous system. So if you've got things like varicose veins, you can either make an oil or buy it with horse chestnut in there, and it's very, very good for your veins. Another thing is it's high in saponins, which is that soap, what gives us suds. So you can make soaps out of them. Quite a lot of our trees have high saponin levels. So yeah, maybe in the future we might be resorting to things like that to wash our clothes.
Well, we might be actually. And then I saw a lovely video of a young girl putting her holes through the chestnuts, and then she made a beautiful necklace out of it. And I think that's a lovely thing to do, to sort of go back to nature to adorn yourself.
Beautiful.
And also lots of lovely nuts are out. I passed a hazelnut tree and everything had come down and there wasn't one left because our little furry friends had got to them first.
The schools have been very, very busy.
Yes.
I too have been scouring them. About a month ago, they were still there, but no, they've been very busy. But what you will see on the hazel is the catkins for next year, which I think is rather beautiful. And this message of Samhain, of endings and new beginnings. So that was rather
beautiful, isn't it? It really is that. The veil is so thin between the ending and the beginning, and that catkin is the perfect symbol of life returning. Yeah.
I've got a piece of oak here, and they've changed to a beautiful autumn gold. And then in the middle, you've got the bud for next year, for next year's growth. So, full of hope.
And strength and courage. The oak is the grandmother, the grandfather of the trees, which is a wonderful thing to go and celebrate as the leaves turn into the most glorious colour. Aren't we lucky?
Really do. So another really important but really overlooked part of the hedgerow is ivy. And you can see here these little fluffy bits. These are the flowers on the ivy, and these are turning to the berries. Not quite there yet. But the flowers offer the last bit of nectar to butterflies and bees. So they're really, really important. Ivy is an amazing air purifier. So especially when we've got high toxins, if you live in a city, having ivy in or around your house is actually good. I thought it caused a lot of problems with trees, but apparently not. It doesn't strangle them or suffocate them as we might have thought. And the only problem it causes with walls is if there was already a weakness in the pointing. But it's, very purifying. And as a medicine, ivy has been used for the lungs. So as it purifies the air, it helps us with our lungs as well to have clear airways. So there's an old-fashioned tincture maker called Alfred Vogel, and they have ivy thyme as a brilliant for coughs and chesty problems. So you can buy it if you didn't want to make it.
And ivy is traditionally used as a symbol of protection, of healing. It can also, because of the shapes of its leaves as being in a heart shape, it was also used a lot in love charms. And of course, it was always paired with holly and the ivy. So there's a sort of sense of fertility around it as well, which is just lovely. And Saturn is its god.
Mm. And I love the thought that the Greeks and the Romans had, that if you wore a headdress of ivy, then you from getting drunk.
Yeah, that goes to the Roman god of Bacchus, who was the god of wine, and that was his crown of ivy. It didn't work, not with him anyway. Okay, so where are we on to next? Are we on to the yew?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the yew, obviously, is incredibly important this time of year. So the yew, you'll notice, has got very fine leaves, and then it's got these beautiful red berries. They're or an avril. So the stone is inside. The berry is the only part of the yew that isn't toxic, but the seed inside is. So best not to. But the birds enjoy the berries. They're very sweet, sticky, which helps the birds to transfer and help the yew grow. The yew is one of the most ancient trees, and often it's thought to predate where the churches are, that the yew came there before. So it's very interesting. It's often referred to as a tree of immortality, because they grow for 4,000-5,000 years, and they grow differently, so they'll spread. And the mother tree will encourage that growth to happen.
I've actually stood in Shropshire in a yew tree which was over 4,000 years old, and it was in a churchyard, and the vicar was so proud of it. I loved that. It was just that it was one of those, oh my God, for what this tree had seen. And there's across the UK, there are many beautiful ancient yew trees. So you can actually do pilgrimages to them, which is really lovely. There's a beautiful one down in South in Sussex as well. I can't remember where it is, but anyway, if you look on the internet and have a look at where all these ancient yew trees are and go visit them, it sort of puts you back in touch with this sense of realizing that there's been many people before we came here, you and me, and there's going to be an awful lot coming after, and we're just this expression of our ancestry at this moment. And for me, it puts me back in touch with the ancient lineage of human beings, actually. Yeah,
absolutely. And it's for me, it also, the medicine that comes from yew, it is highly toxic, but is used in chemotherapy and in treatment of cancers. Taxol.
Wow.
So for breast and lung cancer. So again, over the years, natural medicine hasn't been seen as, important or as effective as our new medicines, but actually a lot of it comes from the natural world.
Yeah.
So yeah.
If you think about digitalis, it comes from the foxglove.
Foxglove, yeah. And aspirin,
absolutely.
Penicillin.
And we forget that, it's such a shame that we've lost so much content. Righty ho. So have you got one more to show us, the horse chestnut?
No. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, and I haven't picked them, is this is a perfect time for mushrooms. So we've got wet and warm. So there are fungi popping up everywhere. Personally, I wouldn't pick anything that I wasn't sure about. There are field mushrooms. There's lots of edible mushrooms out there, but do go with someone that you know.
Absolutely.
But the medicinal mushrooms, have made a huge revival recently. and there's different ways you can take them. So lion's mane is one. This is a beautiful mushroom that looks like a lion's mane. It's extraordinary. And the other is reishi. And there have been cultures from the UK. I haven't seen them growing in the wild. I'd be very excited to do so. But lion's mane is really good for cognition and the gut. So this sense of overwhelm that a lot of people feel, or brain fog, lion's mane can really help with that. And reishi is a wonderful one for calming us down. I think there's a lot of anxiety, agitation at the moment. So reishi, whether it's in a tincture, a powder, a capsule, can be a really nice medicinal mushroom to start working with.
Yeah, and I think particularly at the moment, because we're going to be sitting on the new moon in Scorpio, which is on the 1st of November this year. And it's a really pokey moon. It's Scorpio, and it's literally on the Day of the Dead. So that's a very interesting thing, adding potency to the veil becoming thin. But also this year we have the rulers, the astrological rulers of Scorpio, Mars and Pluto, absolutely opposite each other. And when that happens, it can be very, very volatile. So what Sue and I would say to anyone is, you may feel uncomfortable at this time of year. Just be very, very careful about being drawn into any arguments or conflicts or anything like that. Just take a breath, or getting overwhelmed by the conflict that's happening out in the world. So it is probably one of the pokiest New Years we have this year. It hasn't been an easy year for anyone on this level, and we know how it's playing out at the moment on the world stage. So as Sue said, just make sure that you find natural remedies that you can just use to calm yourself. Do you want to add anything to that, Sue?
Absolutely. So the one thing, if you've ever looked at Bach flower remedies or rescue remedy. So rescue remedy is a great one, but for that sense of overwhelm, the remedy is elm. And they're normally preserved in brandy, but there is a glycerin version for those that don't want any alcohol. And it can really help you with that emotional sense, as I say, of overwhelm. Yeah. Eating good food, and eating food with plenty of protein in it. So think of your soups, stews, casseroles, those sort of really warming curries that are slow cooked, that are really protein and nutrient dense, to help ground you in that time.
Yeah, and also just be aware that there's a massive astrological shift going on this month, just after Samhain, when Pluto finally moves into Aquarius for the next, 20 years. So just be aware of that there is this major shift going from a very earth-orientated sign of Capricorn into this airy, very such a different energy, and we don't know how this is going to manifest, but certainly it looks like there's going to be a lot more to do with technology and AI, but also Aquarius is about humanity. So then there is this sense of, who are we as a humanity now? So again, you might feel very confused by that and concerned about where the world is going. Well, it's certainly going somewhere. We know that. So as Sue says, just take remedies or start to use remedies to help to ease your way into this massive, major transformation.
And I think when you start coming back to the natural ways with the seasonal calendar, it really helps you to feel more grounded, more connected. And by doing, making yourself some sauerkraut, getting your hands in, it's a very physical thing to do as well, like kneading bread. you're connecting to something else, and that can be really beneficial.
Absolutely. And to end this, I'm uncomfortable with the trick and treating at this time of year. For me, Samhain is utterly sacred. It is the time to connect with our ancestry, to pay homage to the ancestry. It's an incredibly sacred time of year. So I don't feel comfortable with children trick and treating. I don't think anybody understands the energy that they're working with, and taking it on sort of such a frippery level for me does not work. But there's also something else you wanted to say about this with the cobwebs, didn't you?
Yeah, something that I've just been made aware of, these fake cobwebs that people put outside their houses. Is actually made aware of that they capture the bees, the insects, and birds in them. So if you are putting your Halloween decorations out, maybe be mindful, especially of the fake cobwebs, and do that inside rather than outside.
Yes. I think again that just shows how out of touch we've got with nature, that we're putting false cobwebs outside, which to me is insane. But that's me. I think the lanterns are lovely, it's all about, the ghouls and the ghosts and all of that. But fake cobwebs for me and dressing up as witches and wizards, it doesn't work for me at all. But that's just me. And I understand the kids love it. So is there anything else you'd like to say to finish off?
So if you wanted to make the sauerkraut, give it a go. A kilo of cabbage, about a tablespoon or less of salt, and that's all you need. You massage it, you get your hands in, scrunch it up, put small amount of salt in first, and then you'll start releasing all the juice in there, and that's all you do. So you use your outer leaves to protect it. You always want a level of juice over the top, and you store it in a kiln jar. It becomes live because it picks up the bacteria from the air, and then you burp it for a couple of days because it's given off these gases, and then it's for however long you want to keep it. But two weeks or more is fantastic. And then you can add other things like apple or ginger or chili to it to flavor it. But that's a really delicious thing to do. And it's been shown to have over 28 different strains of bacteria in it. And 1 tablespoon can give you 10 billion bacteria to support your gut and your immune health. So it's a really good one.
So from both of us, we wish you a very sacred Samhain this year. And just to invite you to really take a breath about what it's really about, and to maybe light a candle to your ancestors and to understand that this is the witch's new year. And we'll see you at the next turn of the year, which will be on the 21st of December. Take care for now. Bye.
Bye.